Chapter 1. The Whispering Shadows. The twin moons of Vordak hung low in the smoky sky, their pale light fractured by the ruined spires of an ancient Mandalorian outpost. Jagged edges of durasteel and permacrete jutted like bones from the earth, casting long, jagged shadows across the desert floor. Dax Solus stood still, shrouded in his blackened Beskar armor. The faint hum of a hidden kyber crystal pulsed faintly within the hilt clipped to his belt, a forbidden artifact for someone like him. His T-shaped visor scanned the horizon. A low breeze carried the scent of ash and sulfur, remnants of a recent battle that had turned this once thriving enclave into a graveyard. To the untrained eye, Dax appeared as just another Mandalorian, stoic and inscrutable. But beneath his helmet, his thoughts churned with purpose and pain. A faint whisper brushed against the edges of his mind. They are coming. He clenched his fists, gauntleted fingers tightening as the darkness within him stirred, a restless beast demanding release. Not yet, he murmured under his breath, his voice filtered through the helmet's modulator. His darkened cape billowed slightly as he turned toward the temple ruins at the center of the outpost, where secrets older than the Republic were buried. Dax's path had not been one of tradition or loyalty to the Mandalorian creed. Raised as a foundling, he had once embraced the warrior code with zeal, but the Force had chosen him, an unwelcome gift that had both saved and cursed him. Banished by his clan for delving into dark arts, he had wandered the galaxy, torn between the ways of Mandalore and the seductive power of the dark side. He approached the temple's broken gates, ancient carvings worn smooth by time. The language was older than basic, older even than the Mandalorian tongue, but the symbols resonated with him. He traced his fingers over a jagged line of text, the words igniting a faint blue glow beneath his touch. "Do you really think you'll find redemption here?" A voice, sharp and mocking, echoed from behind. Dax's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his weapon as he turned. A figure emerged from the shadows, garbed in the crimson and black of the Sith. Her amber eyes gleamed with malice, and her lightsaber ignited with a snap hiss. Dax did not draw his weapon. Not yet. "Redemption isn't what I'm after," he replied. His voice was calm, but his stance betrayed readiness, the kind bred from countless battles. "But if you're here to stop me, you'll need to do better than a flashy entrance." She smirked, twirling her blade in an elegant arc. "Oh, Mandalorian, I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to offer you something far greater than you can imagine." Dax tilted his head, his visor reflecting the light of her blade. "I've already paid the price for power once. I'm not interested in a second debt." "Then you'll die ignorant," she said, leaping toward him with the ferocity of a Vornsker. Dax sidestepped, fluid and precise, his hand darting to his hilt. The blade ignited, its dark crimson glow searing through the night. Their weapons clashed in a burst of sparks, lighting up the desolate ruins. This was not just another fight for survival. It was a duel of wills, a meeting of two beings shaped by the darkness of the galaxy. And as Dax's weapon pushed hers back, he felt the shadows around him deepen, as though the Force itself had chosen to bear witness to his struggle. The clash of lightsabers echoed through the crumbling temple ruins, the searing hum of the blades carving jagged scars into the night. Dax twisted his weapon, deflecting a vicious overhead strike that would have cleaved him in two. The Sith warrior pressed her assault, her movements fluid, each strike precise. But Dax was no novice. His years of training as both a Mandalorian and a Force wielder made him a dangerous opponent. He shifted his weight, pivoting to the side as her crimson blade carved through empty air. A gauntleted fist struck her ribs, sending her stumbling back. Dax stepped forward, his lightsaber held low, ready to strike. "Who sent you?" he demanded, his voice cold and sharp. The wind howled through the ruins, kicking up plumes of dust and ash. The Sith chuckled, a sound filled with venom. "Sent me? Mandalorian, I chose to come here. You think you're the only one seeking the secrets of this place? You're a shadow clinging to the edges of power. I am here to take it." Her hand shot forward, and a bolt of Force lightning arced toward Dax. He raised his blade, absorbing the crackling energy, but the raw power forced him back a step. She used the opportunity to close the distance, her saber whirling in a deadly arc. Dax countered, his blade meeting hers in a dazzling explosion of light. With a twist of his wrist, he locked their sabers together, pushing her weapon aside. His visor reflected her snarling face as he leaned in close. Power like this always has a cost. Are you willing to pay it? Her lips curled into a feral grin. I already have. With a burst of energy, she disengaged, somersaulting backward and landing in a crouch. She raised her hand, and the ruins trembled. Massive chunks of stone and metal tore free from the ground, hovering in the air before hurtling toward Dax like missiles. He didn't flinch. Reaching out with the force, he stopped the debris mid-flight, the strain evident in the subtle tremor of his hands. With a grunt of effort, he hurled the stones aside, sending them crashing into the surrounding ruins. The Sith was already moving, her saber a blur of red light as she charged again. But this time, Dax was ready. He sidestepped her attack and extended his free hand. The force erupted from his palm, slamming into her chest with the force of a detonator. She flew backward, her body colliding with a shattered column. Dust and rubble rained down around her as she slumped to the ground, her saber clattering from her hand. Dax approached cautiously, his weapon still ignited. The dark red glow bathed the fallen Sith in eerie light. She coughed, blood staining her lips, but her eyes still burned with defiance. You think you've won? She rasped, struggling to rise. The secrets of this place will destroy you. I'm not afraid of destruction, Dax said, his voice low and resolute. I've lived with it my entire life. Her laugh was weak but bitter. Then you're a fool. Dax hesitated, his saber hovering near her throat. For a moment, the only sound was the crackling of his blade and the distant howl of the wind. Killing her would be the pragmatic choice. She was a threat, and she knew too much. But a flicker of something stopped him. Mercy? Curiosity? He couldn't tell. Before he could decide, the ground beneath them trembled violently. The ancient temple began to collapse, its foundations weakened by their battle. Stones fell from the ceiling, and fissures snaked across the floor, glowing with an ominous red light. You've triggered something, she gasped, her eyes wide with fear. Dax deactivated his saber and grabbed her by the arm, hauling her to her feet. Then let's make sure it doesn't bury us alive. Together they sprinted through the crumbling ruins, the ground splitting open beneath their boots. Dax led the way, his instincts guiding him toward the exit. Behind them, the temple began to implode, the ancient power it housed consuming itself in a violent collapse. They barely made it outside as the structure caved in completely, a deafening roar filling the air. The dust cloud enveloped them, choking and blinding. Dax let go of the Sith, who stumbled away, coughing. When the dust began to settle, she turned to him, her expression unreadable. You should have let me die. I've done enough killing for one day, Dax replied, his tone flat. Don't make me regret it. For a moment, they stared at each other in silence. Then, without another word, she turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving him alone in the ruins of the temple. Dax stood there, his cape fluttering in the wind, his mind racing. The power within the temple had been destroyed, or so he hoped. But the encounter left him with more questions than answers. Who was she? And what had she meant about the cost of power? As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, Dax knew his path would only grow darker from here. But he didn't fear the darkness. He was the darkness.